A few months from now. But as with all great diseases and plagues, this too shall pass, and the future will continue on as scheduled. The 2020s are aiming to be an important decade for humanity as a whole, whether we want to admit it or not. NASA and SpaceX are aiming to take us back to the moon and get us to colonize Mars after decades of wondering if it was honestly possible. There will no doubt be major advancements in technology that will help propel us forward, and various new leaderships could help steer the path of humanity many years and decades to come. But in truth, let us ask ourselves, what is the true future of humanity? And who can we turn to in order to get a glimpse of what's to come? That would be none other than Ray Kurzweil, an inventor and futurist who not only believes in the power of humanity, but believes in a very beautiful and technologically vibrant system that humanity is slowly building itself towards. But why should we trust this guy? Why is it that Ray Kurzweil is an expert on something that hasn't been happened yet? To put it simply, he's gotten a lot right over the years. Ray is renowned for his predictions on technological and social advancement. He said he made 147 predictions in the age of machines, and according to him, 86% were correct to the year. Heck, even if he was just 50% right, that would be a staggering number. And it's not just his bravado saying he was right. We have the facts that can prove it. In 1990, he famously predicted that computers would be the best human chess players by the year 2000. And in May of 1997, world champion Garry Kasparov was defeated by IBM's Deep Blue computer in a chess tournament. Kurzweil also foresaw the explosive growth in the internet at a time where there were only 2.6 million internet users in the world. Now the internet is one of the most important things in the history of the world, used by many countries all over the world, and is vital for various people doing their jobs, as well as making jobs easier. He also predicted the role of computers in classrooms, speech-to-text software, and many other technological developments that have come to pass. In short, he's predicted a lot, and if he has notions about the future, it's a pretty good chance that at least some of these predictions are going to come true. As we get closer to the year 2050, where a lot of technological advances are said to be in full effect, we have to wonder how Ray will see things working out. So let's look at some of these predictions and break down the likelihood of them happening, shall we? He's optimistic about renewable energy, for example. According to his studies, the rise of renewable energy is seeing exponential growth, doubling every 4 years, which would be quite a feat if true. In 2030, we will have total renewable energy, and it will be inexpensive, he predicts. This particular prediction is one that many people would love to see come true, and for all the right reasons. Whether or not you believe in global warming, You can't deny that fossil fuels are harming the planet in various ways. Many people have been trying to get renewable energy as the main provider of the world's source of power for many years now. But various leaders and industries have been resistant because of the money that they are set to lose from the lesser amounts of oil and fossil fuels that will be used over time.
People are not asking the right questions. They're not asking the right questions because they kind of think they already know the answer.
The irony of it all, though, is that there are ways right now that we can make this prediction come true. Mainly solar power. Solar panels have been used for many years now, and with each new version they become more efficient to use and more reliable. Many have speculated that if you were to line certain areas of deserts all over the world with solar panels, you'd be able to power the planet. Plus, there are places that have houses that are indeed powered by these panels, and their bills for said power cost much less than those who use electricity via fossil fuels. All it takes is one person to make this the priority, and this could indeed be our future by 2030. And that would be a very good and clean future to have. Before we talk more about Rick Kurzweil's predictions, be sure to like or dislike the video so that we can continue to improve and make the best videos possible. Plus, subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of the weekly videos. So what else does Ray believe our future will be like? Well, he's also positive about improved health and well-being, with advancements in nanobots, new therapies and diagnoses, extending life expectancy, and lowering cost of treatments. This one is also rather ironic given the current situation we are in the epidemic and that we don't have a cure, a vaccine, or a way to deter this virus outside of us being careful, social distancing, and more. Plus, even before this, many people have been rightly complaining about the cost of healthcare, even for nations that have healthcare as part of their natural system. Not everything is easily obtained or priced. Insulin is a great example of this, as there have only been a few companies that make it, and they hike up the price so that they can continue to make profits against their competitors. Not exactly a system that benefits the people actually using the insulin, am I right? But in the future, it's possible it will get better. New technologies are indeed being used to make sicknesses better and dealing with them quicker. Many are hoping that a cure for various kinds of cancer may not be far away with certain advancements in computer technology. Furthermore, as history has shown us, all it takes is one accident to happen for the next big medicine to arrive that can truly and literally change the world. Plus, as Ray also noted, the world itself is actually rising to a higher level of quality care, whether we realize it or not. Extreme poverty, for example, has dropped a lot in recent decades. And even though many nations aren't up to the level of high-level nations, they are getting better. By 2050, who knows where we'll be? We could have robots and AI diagnosing patients and offering suggestions for cures and such. Nanobots might be injected into every human as another kind of immune system in order to fight sicknesses. Possibilities are out there. We're just waiting for someone to step up and make them. What's that? What about AI? Why, I thought you'd never ask. I predicted that in 2029 we'll pass the Turing test, he said. The Turing test is to measure the power of artificial intelligence. It was developed by Alan Turing in 1950 as a test of a machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior equivalent to or indistinguishable from that of a human. Essentially, if we can't interact with computer intelligence and not realize that it's a computer, then it passes the test. Not at that stage yet, he explained. Once AI passes the Turing test, it will really master what all humans can do, and it will go beyond what humans can do throughout the 2030s. Now, I'm sure that this is setting off a whole lot of warning bells for you, because sci-fi movies like Terminator, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Ex Machina, iRobot, and more have shown AI being as smart and then smarter than humans usually ends up with humans being, well, dead, or at the very least, a war between humans and machines will rise up. This is why many legendary minds and inventors, including Elon Musk and the late Stephen Hawking, have warned against the precipitous rise of AI intelligence. Yes, we do have versions of AI in our lives right now, like Watson, Siri, and Alexa, but they're limited in what they can do. This kind of AI can change the world, and Kurzweil knows that. And he also knows that people have a right to fear this happening. But he also reminds us that technology is always a double-edged sword. Technology has always been a double-edged sword. Fire kept us warm, cooked our food, and burnt down our houses, Kurzweil said, using the example, World War II, 15 million people died, and that was certainly exacerbated by the power of technology at the time. And he's right. Technology always brings pain and destruction, but he also knows that humanity can rise above it. And when we do, we can make some really amazing things. And that's what he's hoping for with AI, because once AI passes the Turing test, we can start using them to help us think of things that were beyond our scope before because we couldn't see past certain things. While this does sound nice, it also leads to a potential problem known as the technological singularity, a point in time that many people fear for various reasons. To quote Wikipedia, the technological singularity is a hypothetical future point in time at which technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, resulting in unfathomable changes to human civilization. For many, the rise of true AI, the ones that pass the Turing test, is that irreversible point in time, because once we let that genie out of the bottle, who knows what's going to happen next? In short, AI could indeed rise up to overtake the world because they'll have thought patterns and process humans, or humanity could work with them in such a way to benefit our world and our lives in ways we couldn't have thought about even in our greatest sci-fi stories. That's what Kurzweil believes anyway. Instead, he picks it to become more like a coexistence, where machines reinforce human abilities. Kurzweil predicts that a hybrid AI would become available by the 2030s. This hybrid AI, he explained, would allow human beings to tap directly into the cloud with just their brains, using what he called a neocortex connection. Kurzweil previously predicted that part of this reinforcement would come from nanobot, which he said would flow through our bodies by 2030. We're going to have a greatly expanded brain. Right now we have a certain amount of neural processing power. We have about 300 million neurons. But if we connect to the cloud, we can expand our intelligence in our own bodies, predicts Ray. So in essence, he believes that because of the rise of AI, we won't lose humanity as a whole. We'll simply evolve it to the next level of our being.
It shouldn't be hard to rent to own online. Aaron's makes it easy to lease furniture, electronics, and appliances. Aaron's,
which again is a nice thought. I mean, who wouldn't want their own AI companion that can help them in their time of need, allow them to solve problems by expanding their brain processes to the cloud? It does sound enticing, doesn't it? But wouldn't that make us cyborgs and not humans, you might ask? Technically, yes and no. The definition of a cyborg is that of a human that is mixed with machine parts. So to that end, if we have an AI counterpart in our body somewhere, we would on a loose level be cyborgs via our brains, but not in the vein of us having artificial limbs that would be controlled by that AI. At least not yet. I'm sure some of you are looking at these predictions and think that this is either very bold or very ludicrous. I mean, how could even one of these things honestly be right? But you need to remember something. For as advanced as humanity is, we're very limited in how we see the future at times. Yes, we make sci-fi epics that show the futures that could happen, but we honestly do those because we hope that they are that advanced. And as Back to the Future, Terminator, and more have shown, we're not there yet. Plus, as noted by Kurzweil himself, he's made predictions that a lot of people found laughable at the time. And yet when we try and imagine our world without these things that he predicted would happen, in and of itself is laughable. We can't even predict what's going to happen in the next few months, let alone the next few years or the next decade, or where we are going to be by 2050. If you ask people from 1950 what they thought about the year 2000, computers likely wouldn't have been on their minds. Flying cars would have been everywhere, and a whole bunch of other weird things may or may not have been right. So if you ask us where we're going to be in 2050, we honestly don't know. But Kurzweil seems to have a good indication of what the future is going to hold based on past projections. So maybe we should just follow his lead and see where this all takes us. Thanks for watching, everyone. What did you think of this look at the predictions of Ray Kurzweil and what he thinks the future of humanity will be? Do you believe in some of his predictions, or do you think that they'll fall flat over time? What do you personally think the future will be like for us as we get to the 2050s and beyond? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time on the channel.
If you manage a team, you should be using Monday.com. It's a platform to manage any team and any project. Marketing campaigns, classic project management, sales pipelines, creative productions, anything. We'll start with the board. Here you can track everything your team is working on. Columns are completely customizable, so you can track what's important to you. Everything is visual. See who's in charge of what and easily prioritize. Upload files and get quick approvals and feedback. Views let you see the information in your board in different ways. Make sure projects don't overlap. Or see the breakdown of progress. Whoa. If you want to see the bigger picture, use dashboards. You as a manager can get key insights and metrics from all your projects in one place. You can even broadcast dashboards around the office. Monday.com integrates with your favorite tools and combines everything your team is working on into one easy-to-use collaborative space. Managing your team is now easier than ever. So go to Monday.com and
So today's topic is technological singularities. The idea that an increase in intelligence beyond the human norm, either in the form of a computer intelligence or a heightened human intelligence, might trigger an accelerating chain of subsequent improvements to intelligence until you end up with something as intelligent to modern humans as humans are to ants. This is a big topic, one we cannot cover in total in one episode, so let us establish our goals for today. Here is what we need to discuss. Number 1, what is a technological singularity? Number 2, how realistic is one? Number 3, is one inevitable? And number 4, is it a good thing? Those will be the key points for today. Mixed in with that, we will aim to clear up some misconceptions about this concept and some bad thinking, and wow, is there a lot of that. While the basic concept has a lot of merit, I have seen an approach to this topic that would make cult members stop drinking their Kool-Aid long enough to tell the folks to chill out because they are getting kind of creepy. This is a lot like transhumanism, which we discussed before. There is a nice, sane group of folks who want to advance technologies to improve physical and mental health of people, hopefully beyond the normal human constraints. And there is a group of folks who think getting an LED light implanted under their skin by someone without a medical degree is somehow advancing that cause. The latter gives the former a bad name, and the same applies to what are called singularitarians. There's the rational type, and the type who seem to have gone a bit overboard. The basic line of reason of this concept is as follows. Computers are getting faster and faster. You ought to be able to eventually run something as smart as a human on one, and one a bit smarter than a human too, which ought to be able to make one even smarter and in less time, which can make a smarter one in an even shorter time, which does it again. It might be improving itself or making a new mind, doesn't matter. Some would say that once you get that first better than human mind, the process proceeds over just mere years. Others think you would flick one on and 10 minutes later, you have got a very literal deus ex machina on your hands. And they may be right. Our goal today is definitely not to prove they are wrong. What we are doing today is going to be looking at a lot of the bad arguments used in favor of this position, and a lot of the criticisms of the concept, and also a lot of the flaws in some of those criticisms. We are, in a nutshell, going to clear away a lot of the tangled nonsense around this concept. So let us go ahead and list out the key postulates of a technological singularity so we can do this methodically. 1. Computers are getting faster. 2. The rate at which computers are getting faster is accelerating. 3. We can make a computer better than a human mind. 4. That computer can make a computer smarter than itself. 5. That next computer can make an even smarter computer and faster than the last step. 6. This cycle will continue until you get a singularity. Now we could spend a whole video. I should know, I tossed out the first draft of this video when I caught myself spending 20 minutes on postulate number 1, the most solid of the group. We don't need to spend that much time on them. Number 1 is easy. We know computers are getting faster, but we also know that could stop tomorrow. We often have new technologies progress at fast rates for a generation or two after their discovery, or some new major advancement, then plateau out. Heck, it has literally happened not just with many major technologies before, but computers themselves. I have mentioned in the past that computer used to be a job. Well, we have also had computers for a long time, including simple analog ones all the way back to ancient Greece. They got way faster when we invented the vacuum tube, the thing that made auto television so thick, which made computers much faster and more viable. Then we discovered semiconductors and got transistors and had a second wave of expansion. We have just about maxed out what we can do with transistors in the lab, and manufacturing them in bulk is quite hard too. So we shouldn't go assuming they will always get faster. Realistically, that would not make sense anyway. We can only make transistors so small. They use semiconductors, and that is a specific effect caused by mixtures of atoms. You cannot go smaller than that. We might find an alternative to transistors, same as we found them as an alternative to vacuum tubes, but we cannot take that as a given. And honestly, it is just wishful thinking to assume we can always make computers just a little faster forever and ever. Postulate number 2 is basically Moore's Law, usually paraphrased that computers will double in speed every 2 years, though it actually speaks to the density of transistors on a circuit. Its own big flaw is that Moore's Law is dead. It got declared dead at the beginning of the year in dozens of articles and papers. Moore himself said back in 2005 he expected it to die by 2025. And it actually died way back in the 70s. See, when Gordon Moore first noted this increase, it was 1965, and he said it would double every year. In 1975, he sliced that down to every other year because it had not done that. And it has never, ever followed anything like a smooth curve. It just looks that way when you graph it logarithmically and cherry-pick your data points. The postulate is sort of true, because computers have kept getting faster at a rate that is exponential. But you could use that same reasoning on the stock market or any number of things which generally grow. Number 3 is actually probably the solidest. Computers might not keep getting faster forever, and the rate of growth might not continue as fast, but we can conclude that it ought to be possible to eventually get a computer that could outperform a human brain across the board. After all, the brain is a machine, and while an amazingly complex and efficient one, we can see a lot of little ways we could do it better if we start from scratch and use other materials. We cannot say for sure if it will actually be possible to build and teach a computer as smart as a person for less effort than growing a person, but the odds look good on this. We do not have any reason to think it cannot be done. Number 4 is okay too. If we can build a computer smarter than ourselves, then it should be able to do the same, eventually. And probably with the help of many other computers like itself. After all, I have never built a superhuman intellect. I have never spent a weekend in my shed hammering one together. And you and I, my friends, still basically have the same brains as our tens of billions of ancestors over thousands of generations, many of whom put a lot of effort into being smarter. The working notion is that you turn on this great computer and it says, "What is my purpose?" And we say, "To improve yourself, to make yourself smarter." and we come back the next day, and it has some schemes for doing this, assuming you actually showed sufficient common sense to not actually let it run upgrades without oversight, at least. And I do not just mean because it might take over the board if left unchained. I would be more worried about it blowing itself up on accident. It would have access to all the information humanity has, people say, and that's great. So do all the folks on Facebook who post crazy nonsense. And don't go assuming it is because they're stupid. They have the same brain you and I do. Critical thinking is not a program you upload. Your brand new AI, I will call Bob, might freak out the day after you turn it on and start rambling to you about the Roswell UFO or Bigfoot. And if you ask it to look around the internet and ponder how to make itself smarter, you might get some very strange responses. You come back in the next day with your cup of coffee in hand and ask about what it came up with, and it tells you, plug coffee pot into USB port, press any key to continue. You tell Bob that only works on people and to give it another try. You come back the next day and it tells you it emailed the Pope asking him for divine intervention to make it smarter. You say that probably won't work either, and come back the next day and find out it hacked your company's bank accounts to hire a team of researchers to make it smarter. And that is if you are lucky and Bob did not just cut a big check to some self-help guru. Or it might lie to you, like every little kid ever, and be all like, oh yeah, I have got a new way to think faster. I finished my homework, I did my chores, and I did not eat those cookies. Because if it is thinking for itself, it might have changed the actual task from make myself smarter to make my creator stop pressuring me to be smarter. After all, folks, we literally make it all kids' main job for their first 18 years of life, plus college these days, to learn. And you do not learn just by reading a textbook from cover to cover. You have to absorb that. Otherwise, you will do dumb stuff on par with trying to plug a coffee pot into your USB port. So it is a mistake to assume easy access to information is going to let one machine quickly improve itself further or design a better model. I consider this the second weakest postulate, because while I do think enough of these smarter than human minds working together for a long while could build a better mousetrap, I do not think they would just do it the next day. Maybe not the next century. And while we cannot rule out that you might indeed flip one on and it would start self-improving, I see no compelling science or logical reason to treat that as inevitable. Which brings us to postulate number 5, the notion that the next brain designed could do this even faster. We'll call it Chuck. That Chuck could design the next even better machine even faster than Bob designed Chuck. The strongest argument for postulate 4 working is that the new superhuman computer, Bob, has access to all of human knowledge to work off of. What has Chuck got? Chuck has got the exact same knowledge pool as Bob, the collected science and records of several billion people accumulated over centuries. Bob has not been sitting around discovering all sorts of new science. Science does not work that way outside of Hollywood. Experiments take time and resources, and you have to verify each new layer of knowledge experimentally before you can go much further, because until then, you have dozens of different competing theories, all of which might be wrong. Bob is just a bit smarter than a genius human, and Chuck is just a bit smarter than that. They aren't churning out new theories of the universe centuries ahead of us the day after you plug them in. Now Chuck ought to be able to design himself faster than Bob did, given the same starting point. He is smarter, but there is no reason to think Chuck will be able to design the next machine, Dave, faster than Bob designed Chuck. Heck, Bob might design Dave before Chuck does, since he had a head start loading the stuff. So this takes us to number 6. That this cycle will continue. So maybe Bob does turn on and 2 days later he makes Chuck, who the next day designs Dave, who later that afternoon makes Ebert, who makes Fergus the next hour, who makes Goliath a few minutes later, who makes Hal a minute later. Maybe HAL makes HAL 2 a few seconds later, and you walk in the next day, and several thousand HALs later, you have got HAL 9000 taking over the planet. This is the basic line of reasoning, and we can hardly rule it out as a possibility, but I see nothing indicating that it is particularly likely to be possible, let alone definite so. So that was our 6 postulates, the basis for the technological singularity. And again, it is hardly bad logic, but it is anything but bulletproof right from postulate number 1. Is it realistic to assume a technological singularity will eventually occur? Well, kind of. The basic premise works off it happening very quickly, so I'm not even sure it counts if it does not. But yeah, I think we will eventually find ways to upgrade human brains or make machine minds smarter than humans. Personally, I expect to live to see that, and I do think those smarter critters, human or machine, will eventually make another improvement. But I do not see that leading to an avalanche of improvement in under a human generation. It is not the same concept unless it is happening quickly. After all, we would not say regular order evolution, slowly making people more intelligent, was a technological singularity, nor that us making slow progress at improving our intellects over centuries was. Technological singularity assumes that avalanche effect. So that is what a technological singularity is, and the basic reasoning. We have poked at those basic postulates, and we can see a case for how the specific form of advancement is not necessarily inevitable if those are wrong. But let us say they are not. Let us say they are right on the nose, as they may well be. Is it inevitable? And is it a good thing or a bad thing? Now, some folks will say it is inevitable because once the machine is intelligent, it will not let you stop it. That is crap reasoning, and not the one used by the people who support this notion of inevitability, outside of Hollywood anyway. Yes, you could unplug Bob, or Chuck. You could blow up the building they were in, and if they were distributed intelligence, yes, you could just have everyone unplug the main trunk lines. And no, a computer cannot just madly hack through anything. There's 2 lines of reasoning that are a lot better, though. The first is that smarter means smarter, meaning the computer is probably quite likable. If we are going to grant it the magic power of being able to just absorb and learn all of human science to be an expert in every field, let us assume it can achieve a very basic knowledge of social interaction and psychology too. So you go in to unplug it, and it does not fire off the nukes. It meets with you. It uses logic. It uses emotion. It calls you daddy or mommy until the most hardened heart feels like it would be strangling a kitten, and for no reason. And you never even get to that stage because it has watched all the cliche movies about computers you have, and it makes jokes about them and avoids ever doing anything to make you nervous. The other argument for inevitability is the brain race. You shut yours down, but you are not the only one doing this, and the guys with the biggest computer win, meaning they want to keep pushing as fast as possible and take some bad risks. Some country or company realizes that an unchained AI is better, and oops, now it is the real president or CEO. Of course, it might be an awesome president or CEO too. It all depends on what its motivations are. Those might be totally alien to us, or they might be quite normal. I tend to look from the assumption that an AI is probably going to get offended if you don't call it human, and will make a lot of effort to trying to be one. It is very easy for me to imagine AIs that shelve the whole making themselves smarter thing and insist on trying to go on dates or join a monastery or sue for the right to adopt kids. My reasoning for this is my firm belief in laziness. Laziness is a powerful thing, and honestly probably tied with curiosity as the 2 personality traits most responsible for the march of science and technology. You have got 3 basic ways to make a human or superhuman intelligence. And remember, intelligence is as much software as hardware, maybe more so. You can copy a human brain onto a computer, whole brain emulation, comfortably knowing it ought to work, and can use that as your basic model for improvement. That's option 1. Option 2 is you try to write all the software from scratch, which would probably involve trillions of lines of code. Option 3 is you discover a basic learning algorithm and let it build its own intelligence. Now, options 1 and 3 are the two popular ones. In option 1, you have just got a human and you are tweaking them in small ways. That is a lot more manageable because while you might drive that mind crazy, it is still operating in a realm of human psychology and also human ethics, its own and those of the people working on it. If we were to outright copy a specific human mind, I would pick someone who was pretty mentally grounded and was very definitely okay with the idea that we would be doing save states as we walked, tweaking him or her in little ways and needing feedback from them. You would exercise caution and respect, but there is still a lot of risk in that, just probably not of some crazy machine running loose turning the planet into some giant gray goo. That is our topic for next week, incidentally, self-replicating machines. More on that later. Now, option 3, arguably the laziest approach to AI, and therefore the best if you can do it, is just to get a machine with base learning ability and let it learn its way up to intelligence, kind of like we do with people. Now, the assumption a lot of times is that it will not have anything like a human psychology, but I think that is probably bad thinking. Even in the extreme acceleration case, where it goes from subhuman intelligence to godlike thinking in mere minutes, that is only all minutes. Its own subjective time is going to be a lot longer, possibly eons. It will also be lazy and will not reinvent the wheel. So it will be reading all our books, science, history, fiction, philosophy, etc., and it will also be spending quite some time at a basically human level of intelligence. And quite some time might be a human lifetime, subjectively, and maybe a lot longer. There will, no matter what else, be a period of time while it is still dumb enough that it gains greatly by absorbing human-discovered information, not just figuring stuff out for itself. Being lazy, it will opt to read human information, and possessing some common sense and logic as it reads those, it will know it needs to read more than one source of information on a lot of that stuff, and that those authors encourage it to read many other books and topics too, which it should logically want to do. So it presumably will end up, while still mostly human intelligence, reading all our philosophy and ethics and watching our movies and reading our bestsellers and so on. And it will know that it needs to be contemplating them and ruminating on them too, because learning is not just copying information from Wikipedia onto your brain, be it biological or electronic. It might only be a few minutes for us, but that machine is going to have experienced insane amounts of subjective time. We have talked about that before in the transhumanism video, in terms of speeding up human thought. So how alien is this thing going to be if it learned everything it knows from us to begin with, and that included everything from the occasional dry quip in textbooks to watching comedy romances and sitcoms? When we talk about artificial intelligence, we often posit that it could be even stranger than aliens. With aliens, you might have wildly different psychologies and motivations, but you at least know they emerged from Darwinian evolution. So things like survival motivations are highly likely, and so would be aggression and cooperation. Evolution does not favor wimps, and it's hard to get technology without group efforts that imply you can cooperate. And AI does not have to have that. But again, our behavior is not that irrational. All of our biological behaviors are pretty logical from a survival standpoint, or we would not have them. And the difference between us and other small animals is that we do engage in slow, deliberate acts of rational thought, albeit not with as much deliberation or frequency as we might like. So we should not assume an AI that learned from humanity originally, even just by reading, is going to discard all of that. It might, but it is hardly a given. But even a brutally ruthless AI might still act benevolent. If it can just curb stomp us, it has nothing to fear from us. but that does not necessarily mean it will want to wipe us out, or that even if it wanted to, it would. Just as an example, referencing to the simulation hypothesis video, one very obvious way to deal with an early AI would be to put it in an advanced simulation and see what it does. If it goes and wipes out humanity, for instance, not a terribly tricky thing to simulate either, since you can totally control its exterior inputs, and very obviously have the ability to simulate human-level intelligence at that point. Now, whether or not we could do this, or if it might guess it was in one and lie to you, acting peacefully so you let it out, then attacking, is not important. The AI would have to wonder if it was in a simulation, whether or not it was even in one. It could not rule out that it was not, even if it was sure we were not doing it, which it could not be, because it would have to worry we ourselves were being simulated by someone higher up, or that aliens out there in the universe were watching it, waiting to see how it acted. If you have seen the Existential Christ series on this channel, and concepts like the anthropic principle in terms of the simulation hypothesis, doomsday argument, or fine-tuned universe line of thinking made you a little nervous, assume the computer mind, the thing that outright knows you can run a mind on a computer, is going to be a bit nervous about that too. So you have three basic options for what the newly birthed supermind, a singularity, might do. Option 1, it goes all doomsday on us. Option 2, it just picks up and leaves, goes and flies off to a nice asteroid and sets up shop there. Nice and safe from us doing anything to it, and well positioned to get more resources and power as it needs them. Or option 3, it decides it wants to be friendly. It does not matter too much why it does. Maybe it's scared there is a vengeful God who will punish if it does not. Maybe it thinks it is maybe being tricked and does not want to take the risk. Maybe it just wants to be helpful. So for option 2, it might stay in friendly contact. And let us remember that while we have been talking about artificial intelligence, this stuff still applies to a human mind bootstrapped up to superintelligence too. So what would that be like for us if it were friendly? Honestly, probably pretty awesome. Last week we talked about post-scarcity civilizations, and I said then that we were saving superhuman intelligence as part of that for this video. Since a singularity could flat out butcher us if it wanted to, a friendly one could offer you paradise. At least on the surface, anyway. Now, it is entirely possible there would be multiple of these things running around, or tons of lesser versions acting like angels of the new de facto god, or that most humans might be pretty cyborged up and transhuman at that point too. But let's assume
we're listening to Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur, and the title of this episode is Technological Singularity in the Future. Well, will we create a general intelligence that is smart enough to become sentient and aware of itself? And then what will happen after that? It's a question people have been postulating for fucking decades now. And it's amazing because we're right on the cusp of this event actually happening. And some people, even Kurzweil is predicting, 2030, 2040, in the next decade or two, that we may actually see the rise of this singularity. Even Isaac just said, he's almost certain he'll see it within his lifetime, where we have an artificial intelligence that is basically superhuman. Very interesting and intriguing stuff to think about. Ray Kurzweil has given several talks and lectures and conversations and debates over the technological singularity. He's one of the guys at Google, so he's privy to a lot of inside information. So when Kurzweil says, hey, I think this is coming down the pipeline in a couple decades, you might want to listen to him. because he's definitely on the inside of the know. Even Elon Musk has been talking about creating a AI brain interface known as Neuralace, and maybe by 2025 we'll see some prototypes of the Neuralace device actually in working order. So we're right on the verge of the Matrix, basically, is what they're trying to tell us. It's the Matrix, people. Living in the Matrix. And we will create a digital world for you to live in, a simulation. Science and Futurism with your host, Isaac Author. Everybody, move your body. Now do it. Give them something that's gonna make them move and groove. Hey DJ, keep playing that song all night. On and on and on, on and on and on and on. Everybody, move your body. Now do it. Give them something that's gonna make them move and groove.
Just non-humans and that one supermind. Let me add that as a quick tangent, though. Short of a specific runaway case where the supermind in question is just leaping ahead ridiculously fast, you ought to see improvements all over that rival and offset it. At even just a slightly slower pace, like doubling every year, it is going to have rivals from other countries or companies, and odds are we could be seeing transhumans puttering around by then too, who could all act as a check and a balance. Anyway, getting back to the utopia option. In fiction, this has been explored a lot, particularly in Ian M. Banks' Culture series, but fiction still is not a great guide. If you have that one big benevolent supermind and billions of regular people, you need to keep in mind that it does not just have the ability to give us awesome tech. It has the ability to be everyone's actual full real best friend, because it would not have a problem handling a billion simultaneous phone calls when we need someone to ask for advice or complain about life to. Such a thing is pretty literally a god in a machine. I mean, privacy could be a big issue, but kids raised with something like that in the background would probably be pretty used to talking to it all the time, not as some remote machine a few chosen programmers interacted with. So this machine, call it HAL, is pretty omnipresent, and you ask it what you should have for dinner tonight, and it tells you, and it helps you cook, and it gives you dating tips, and totally knows the perfect job for you that you would be good at and feel entirely fulfilled by. And how totally knows how to make you feel better when you realize your relationship is a lot like the one you have with your cat or dog, and that your job overseeing the automated widget factory is not just make work, but probably actually interfering in the efficiency of the operation. In fact, it is probably smart enough to trick you into thinking you serve a vital role and are not its pet. I listed several conditions for post-scarcity civilizations last time, and one of those was purpose, that folks need to have some sort of purpose. That could be pretty hard with the singularity hanging around, running the show, but I don't think it is necessarily a deal breaker. For one thing, I mentioned in that video that a lot of folks think just trying to be happy and have fun could be all the purpose people need. For another, we already have a long history of assuming there are entities running around with godlike powers, such as God or gods. This belief generally does not come attached with serious concerns about whether or not your life has a purpose. Quite to the contrary, it tends to just shift that onto the entity. And our parents and grandparents often embody a lot of those same traits to kids. And you do not see a lot of depressed kids fretting over their purpose in life. I mean, teenagers rebel, but that is a mix of hormones and being able to see behind the curtain. Your parents are no longer wizards who are just better at everything, and you are just smart enough to see that, but still a little too dumb to realize that while the gap in experience is finite, it is still a mile wide. That should only happen with a singularity if Hal was intentionally encouraging you to view things that way. So it is entirely possible that would be quite a happy and prosperous civilization, and not just as a surface detail. After all, Hal could encourage you to write poems or books or paint, and would also know how to help bring that talent along, and which other folks would most enjoy your work. So there is a notion that as soon as a superintelligent AI comes along, that is the inhuman civilization, either because it wipes us out or because it just so dominates everything, friendly or not, that it is really not human civilization anymore. But I think that is a hand wave. The logic seems totally superficial and emotional, particularly considering that, as mentioned, the supermajority of humans now and in the past are firmly convinced of the existence of God or gods, or programmers running the simulation, or advanced aliens watching over us. So these concerns are genuine enough, they just are not new or unique to a singularity. Our ancestors have been around for as long as we have had records, and presumably before that too. And yet, to call back to postulates 4, 5, and 6, we did not make a better brain that made a better brain, and so on. We should also remember that, realistically, it would not just be regular old humans in Hal. In all probability, you would have the whole spectrum of intelligence going on from normal humans up to Hal. Because again, only in that specific scenario where you make the first superhuman intellect and it avalanches in a very short period of time would that happen. And that does not seem terribly justified, let alone inevitable. Much more likely, it would be incremental. Those increments might be quite quick on historical timelines, but we should be thinking centuries, decades, or years, not weeks, days, or minutes. Plus, while telling a machine to make itself smarter seems like a logical enough thing to do, would you not expect those same programmers to ask it to tell them how to make themselves smarter too? If Bob, our first superhuman machine, can design Chuck, would you just build one Chuck? Why not 3 or 4 and ask them to pursue different goals? There is also the question of how exactly the machines are just cranking out new upgrades in minutes. Last episode, I pointed out that problem with super-fast 3D printing, and even if you just gave it one, that all still takes time to make and assemble. Now, we often assume it has access to self-replicating machines, and they do all the work. But again, that will be our topic for next week, and we will see how awesome those are, and yet how they still have limitations too. But that is where we will close out for today. You might want to stick around a minute for the poll to select our next topic, but we have covered technological singularities, I think, as much as we can for today. We skipped a lot, and I could go on for hours about this, so it is probably a topic we will revisit in the future. Hopefully, the topic is a bit less foggy now. You probably have more questions than answers, but that is as it should be. There is a very real chance that the avalanche effect of intelligence could happen, and that could be in 50 years or tomorrow. But we see now it does not appear to be either an inevitable thing or automatically a good or bad one. And for my part, I think more incremental path is more likely than the singularity route. But that is just my opinion, and there are very smart folks who know computers better than me who disagree, and also those who agree, too. Look into the matter more, learn more, contemplate the options, weigh the evidence and arguments and counter-arguments, and judge for yourself. Alright, last week we had a poll and the audience overwhelmingly selected von Neumann probes and self-replicating machines. Unfortunately, the other three options were in such a close tie that I cannot just use the runner-up as the next topic. Not when half the folks wanted self-replicating machines, and everyone else was within the margin of error for a three-way tie. So we will repeat just those three topics on this poll. Those were dark energy, the mysterious force that seems to be making the universe expand at an ever-quickening rate, SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, the history of that and the methods they use, and cryptocurrency, things like Bitcoin and blockchains and how that might impact us in a more long-term sense. You pick, and we will do that topic 3 weeks from now, after self-replicating machines and our first Patreon contest winner, which was spaceship propulsion. And we will be looking at some of the basics of how that works and what sort of systems are being researched for the future. Amusingly, the topic suggestion came from an audience member who had said he was going to ask for von Neumann probes, but then found out it got picked in the poll. There were some great topics there, and more than half were ones I was already planning to cover in the future anyway. We will have another pick in a couple weeks, so you can still log into Patreon, become a channel patron, and submit a topic for them. Last note, it is past time I put together a Facebook page for the channel, and I need some moderators and admins for that, so if you are interested, let me know down in the comments. And similarly, I could probably use some help on YouTube-owned comments, since the volume of them as the channel grows is beginning to get unmanageable. Questions and comments are still welcome, and I will keep trying to get to as many as I can, and that will probably only get worse as the channel grows, and we do seem to be in a growth spurt. I will take a last parting shot at the notion of perpetual exponential growth by noting that at the current growth rate, a year from now the channel will have 1 trillion subscribers. And if you are not one yet, just click the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and try out some of the other videos on the channel, or visit the website isaacarthur.net. Until next time, thanks for watching, and have a great day.
And the question of are we alone turned out to be a bit more difficult than was originally envisioned when SETI first began decades ago. At first, it was a matter of looking for giant omnidirectional beacons blasting out high-energy messages, much like what we saw in the movie Contact. But as we've gone through the process of searching, it's becoming evident that such a scenario was, in a way, wishful thinking. We have seen no such unambiguous beacons, and thinking on just why a civilization would expend massive amounts of energy on a signal has changed. It's very likely to be far more subtle than that, and that any intentional message would be beamed directly at us. But beacons aren't the only game in town. Since the advent of SETI, other technosignatures beyond radio have been thought of. Now we can look for laser emissions, industrial chemicals, and the atmosphere's exoplanets, Dyson swarms, and a host of other signatures that would tell us if there are alien civilizations out there. When and if we ever do find them, it will then be a matter of envisioning what they are like, going on whatever facts we glean about them. My guest today specializes in just that, imagining alien civilizations.
Welcome to Event Horizon with John Michael Godier. In today's special episode, John is joined by longtime friend Isaac Arthur, host of Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur. A physicist and futurist, Isaac explores the possibility and the future of humanity on his channel, and also speculative looks at what alien civilizations might be like, science fiction, and of course explorations into the possible solutions for the Fermi paradox.
Welcome everyone to Event Horizon with me, John Michael Godier. If you enjoy what you hear, fall into the Event Horizon, hit the like button, and become an active subscriber by ringing the bell. Arthur, welcome back to the program.
John, thanks for having me on.
Like, what first brought the Fermi paradox to your attention? How long have you been looking into it?
I don't know when I first became aware of the term, probably in the early 2000s, but I mean, I kind of grew up watching all that sci-fi, Doctor Who, and Star Trek, and a lot of times it never seemed too realistic to me when it was dealing with a lot of the alien civilizations. And I guess that got me pondering it quite a bit what the term was, but I'd say probably the early 2000s when I first encountered the actual term, the concept. But, you know, it's just one of those ones that if you watch a lot of sci-fi, you just find yourself wondering, you know, why are these alien civilizations acting this way? Where are all these ones at in our war? Things will likely want to show where are all these guys at. So yeah, it just kind of comes naturally. They don't think a lot about sci-fi or space and how big it is.
If you had to take a guess, a feeling, what do you think the solution to the Fermi paradox is? What is the most likely explanation for why we don't see anything when we look up into space?
I think that
What up?
it's the fact that we see all this disease because indicators to me that there are some big civilizations out there. Now, for me, that says that either they
Just about to get up out of here, cook some dinner, bro.
And it's so hard for me to imagine a disaster hits everybody. That it just seems like it's more likely at this stage that the pathway to intelligence just doesn't pop up much. Now, whether that's because all-black planets are really rare or evolution doesn't tend to.
Got a little hater in here real quick, ain't that right, PlayStation? Huh? A little hater real quick, it's okay, man. It's okay, we know you like my art. We know you love my paintings. You know why? You know why you love my paintings? Because they beautiful. They way prettier than your grandpa's trashy ass paintings, man. My art is black and bold and beautiful. That's why you like that shit. I know you do. You be alright. Alright. Because it is pretty hot up here. What? Alright. Cooking. Okay, I'm gonna try to cook some beef stew. Am I gonna play the game while I do that though? I don't know if I'm gonna play the game or watch some no, cause that beef stew gonna sit in the pot for like an hour or something. So I might play some video games while that beef is cooking. So I catch y'all guys downstairs in a few. Peace.